All right. Hello, this is Wmpyr. Um, Here to talk about ancient fencing once again. And look, the reason why I've been so obsessed with this is for one, you know, in my Kia training, Kali, Escrima, Arnis, it's just naturally progression. It took me here. Um, So I always believe it's important to cite your sources. Where is this coming from? And I'm telling you right now, for me, it is just from training in the Filipino martial arts for over 3 decades. It's brought me here naturally. That's all I can say. Now, when it comes to self-defense, and that's my primary interest, right, to be able to use this stuff in real life, I believe that today's popular culture, the way people view it is MMA, which is what you see in cage fighting. MMA is the number one martial arts right now. That's just the way people view it. That's the most popular viewpoint. Look, I'm not against MMA, so please keep that in mind. I'm not against it, and I have studied it, more importantly. But I feel like that is not where it's at, and I definitely feel like something's missing there, right? And the other answer is firearms. Okay, so people go, well, if you're really serious about self-defense, do MMA. And the other answer is, well, freaking carry a gun. Okay, so it's basically MMA and firearms. That's today's answer to self-defense. And I just feel like there's something really, really big missing. You might feel the same way as well, or you might not. Okay. Um, yeah. So that is the biggest point. And for me, um, I'm not saying that those are wrong answers. I just feel like something huge is missing. There's a big piece of the puzzle that's not there to help me really understand combat, to understand the self-defense situation that we're talking about. And that piece of the puzzle to me, the key that solves it is ancient fencing. Okay. So I really like what I'm showing you right here because on the top we have the Game of Thrones sword fighting scene, which, you know, to some point, to some extent, movie fighting with the swords is that in itself is an art. And even in Japan, they consider that an art. Now, not everyone that does theatrical sword fighting, that kind of choreography, is a skilled um, is really skilled at sword fighting. I mean, they're very obviously they're doing it for choreography's sake, so they're good at choreography. But that doesn't make them a realistic sword fighter. But some are. Just saying. I'm just saying some are. And then I also like on the bottom of that we have Chinese sword fighting, and then of course to the right of that we have people in armor. And then on top of that, we have obviously the Kill Bill, which is with the katana sword, and then we have Zoro uh, on her right side, and then we have the Jedi's duking it out. So that's futuristic. And then we have historical to the right of Uma there, and then on the bottom, yeah, it just looks like that almost looks like maybe it's modern day Hema. Not sure. But yeah. So anyway, it covers a lot right here. So I like these pictures. And yeah, what I'm talking about ancient fencing is I'm not it's not specific to one style. I'm really almost talking about like back in the caveman days, when a person when a human being picked up a weapon for the sake of survival, meaning they're being attacked by another human being, or they're being attacked by, a wild animal. So it's one or the other. So in that kind of situation, how did they use that weapon? That's really what I'm talking about. And to me, that's from that came the sword, came fencing. So we have to go all the way back to those caveman days. And to me, the answer there was the spear. And for a long time, that was relevant. The spear was relevant for many, many thousands of years, even after the caveman times, into ancient battlefield times. It was all about the spear, in my opinion. Now, there were other weapons around that, but it really came down to the spear. That was the longest weapon that we could have until you went into projectile weapons, or you went into, like, to me, still part of a projectile weapon, but like a chained weapon. A flexible weapon is headed into the projectile weapon, where now it's no longer attached to a cord or a rope, or something like that, where now you're actually literally launching the thing. But in other words, we were obsessed with distance. How far can we be away from the target and take them out? And then also, if we do end up closer, how do we take them out, kind of thing. And it's always distance based. And the spear, to me, was like a pivotal, it's the center point, in my opinion. So from the spear came, to me, the sword. The sword is honestly a more high-tech weapon. It takes more technology to build a sword than a spear. And then, we could link that to the knife. And then, to me, this is where, like I said, today's self-defense is about, a lot of people feel like it's MMA and firearms. Well, the MMA part, which is empty hands, that, once again, to me, links to the knife. And then from the knife, we go to the sword, which the knife is just a half sword, right? Or it's a broken sword. And then from there, from the sword, we go into spear. Well, once again, so they're all connected in my viewpoint. So we're really talking about the same style. If you go in a very big picture point of view, kind of like how they show in science the universe, and then they'll show planets, and then they'll zoom out, and then they'll go into galaxies, and then they're going into the universe, that kind of thing. So when we're zooming out, because when you start with styles, you'll have very specific sword styles, or knife combat styles, or empty hand styles. But as you zoom more out and look at the big picture, to me, we're talking about the same galaxy. We're talking about it's the same thing. This is combat. And why is this important? Once again, to me, this is important because in a real life self-defense situation, right, someone is trying to mug me, or I'm at a gas station, I'm at a store, and the store's being robbed. Okay, so at that point, I'm going to use a Superman punch and a calf kick and go for the rear naked choke, because that's what MMA teaches you, technique-wise. And I don't feel that's the answer, And then, okay, so do I take out my firearm and just blow people away? I mean, that can happen too, but to me, that's also very extreme. So once again, I feel like there's something missing there, And within those two extremes, I feel like this is it. This gives me a much better answer for self-defense. So obviously I'm not going to have a spear, and obviously I'm not going to be wearing armor, but this sets the base. By studying this, And that's how I came to the diamond defense conclusion, which was you need, okay, I don't have armor, I want a shield. And guess what? I'm wearing it on me. So if I'm slow at taking it off and using it as a shield, it's armor at that point. So I have rudimentary, very crude, you know, armor that is practical and suitable for today's EDC everyday carry for today's modern urban self-defense. So I'm walking around with a defense bag. There's nothing out of place with that. A crossbody bag, a belt bag, you know, for ladies, you could have a purse. There is nothing out of place with that. You could live your normal life, probably not even change a whole lot, and you have a realistic means of actually protecting yourself, which links back to this because I don't have a picture here, but they were using shields and, you know, armor and shields to protect themselves against the sword and the spear and other weapons. And that shield, which, you know, there's all kinds of different sizes and stuff, but it eventually got smaller and smaller and smaller when the battlefields became less and less and less. They're less frequently going into the battlefields, and it's changing more into civilian life, kind of closer to what we have today. Then the shields became smaller. We had like buckler shields, okay? And the armor became smaller and smaller to where it basically disappeared, and they're no longer wearing armor. So that's what I'm trying to tell you guys. Okay, it is completely linked, and it gives us a much more realistic solution to today's self-defense. And same with, what if the guy pulls out a knife and he's attacking me, all right? Or, you know, what if I have a knife and I'm trying to protect myself against like 2 or 3 guys trying to attack me? Am I going to be defanging the snake, you know, without really understanding what that is? I should understand that the base is the spear. So the spear is designed to thrust and poke. Why? Because I want that distance. So without understanding that, and I'm immediately defanging the snake and going into medium range or setting myself up to go into close range, it doesn't make sense, y'all. Like, do you know what you're doing? You know, you're taking yourself into a more violent, possibly even more violent situation, whether it's going to be the violence is directed towards you or you have to take them out when it could have been avoided. So that to me is very important. Understanding this whole thing about distance, and it is about getting the hell away and surviving. Because back then, you know, it's not like they could easily go to a 24-hour hospital and get treated. That's not the way it worked. You're way out, possibly, you know, from your village. You're in the middle of nowhere. You got attacked. You know, what you gonna do? There may not be a doctor or a hospital around. What you gonna do? So I think the people back then, like, they didn't have a choice. So they understood that they had to be smart. They had to be very, very careful. So they weren't just like quick to jump into battle. And I think that's why they also had a code of honor system with the medieval knights. And then in Japan, we have the samurai, but every other culture had something similar to that. And warriors were well respected because they understood how easily human life could disappear if you did this. And I mean, I'm talking about times where it was less civilized, and people's lives were much, much cheaper at the time. And even then, they created a code of honor when it came to battling with weapons. When people died of, like, you know, just like the common flu or something, just because they didn't have the technology to treat stuff like that, or they didn't understand stuff like that. And even then, they had a code of honor to value human life because they understood just how easy it is to take a life when weapons were involved, and especially if you didn't have armor or a shield, which is today's case. We're walking around today every day without armor and a shield. So we definitely need to understand this kind of thing, and the transition between the battlefield to historical civil life. We need to see that transition. We need to understand it, in my opinion. So that's why I've been obsessed with this kind of thing, and I feel like I've learned a lot, and it's made more more sense for me to understand why do I do things the way I do right now. Why did I come to these conclusions? I basically went from the knife to a shield, to the defense bag, and why did I do that? That kind of thing, to understand that, this has really, really helped me. So anyway, that's it for now. Thank you for viewing, and take care, folks.